Hang on, Scooter. There you go. Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. And this is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and this is Conversations with a Corgi. So it is minus 8 degrees here in Northampton. I don't think we broke the record, which was like minus 18 last night, but it was down to about minus 15 for sure. It was very cold, and it continues to be very cold here. I have never come down into my kitchen and had it be this cold, although this house is new and it's holding up really well in this weather. Nothing's even close to freezing, and the house is staying warm even though it's spacious and open with high ceilings. So we're doing all right, but boy, if we lost power, we'd all be in trouble up here in the Northeast. So today we're going to continue our discussion about animal communication and some of the variations on that. Hi, Danny. I know it's cold where you are. So we're going to today talk about a medical intuitive. And I have had several clients over the years, animal clients, who have used, their parents have used a medical intuitive to try to figure out what's going on with their pet or their horse, because the vet in their area, it does not have any idea what's going on, and they feel like there's layers of things going on. And so there are these medical intuitives across the country that you can contact. And what a medical intuitive person is someone who uses intuitive abilities to find the cause of a physical or emotional condition. Some people call them medical clairvoyants, a medical psychic, or even an intuitive counselor. And so what they do is, there's a couple of different ways they can work. Sometimes they just get quiet and imagine themselves being the animal that you're consulting about, and try to feel what that animal is feeling in his body. Then there are others who work by kind of taking a journey through the organ systems of the body of your animal, and they just imagine what the health and vitality is of each organ system as they work their way through the body. So there's a couple of different ways that they can do that. They energetically read the organs and the glands and the tissues in the body, and they can scan the body for imbalances, and often they are useful because they can explain the connection between some kind of emotional imbalance and a physical imbalance, and that can be often very helpful. For people in particular, you can process emotional things. But with pets, I mean, the work I do as a craniosacral therapist often gets to release emotional issues, and certainly emotion code work, which I also do, can release those emotional issues. And part of the way that emotion code works is the idea that releasing those emotional issues will release any of the physical problems and restrictions in the body that have been caused by those trapped emotions. So a medical intuitive can be really helpful for some people or animals to release some of those emotional issues. For instance, I had a client who was in a very bad car accident, and on that same day, while she was being rushed to high-level medical care, the person caring for her dog, who was pretty not good with other people, had a problem with the door. The dog got loose, and the dog was also having high-level medical care. And they were both quite sick for a long time and in the hospital. And so there was a lot of emotions around this experience. As you can imagine, the sense of not being there for your dog, and the dog not being there for his person, and the trauma and confusion of running loose in the neighborhood and being hit by a car, wondering where your people are who have been there with you. And he was a fairly new adoptee at that point. They had actually found him just roaming, and they adopted him, and he was a great big dog. And then the person struggling to get better, and then all the things that happened to her, she was unable to return to her prior type of work. And so it was a very emotionally charged circumstance from start to finish. So in that case, a medical intuitive can be helpful, because it's hard to tease out what are the physical issues in the body after something like that, and what are the emotional issues, and what's the connection between them. Some medical intuitives are indeed medical doctors, and certainly this comes from the origins of craniosacral therapy back into the field of osteopathy. Andrew Weil talks about Fulford, who was an osteopath, classically trained, does a lot of work much like craniosacral therapy, and Fulford was able to, well, first of all, he did house calls. Oh my gosh, how lucky was Weil's family. But he was a medical genius because he could just put his hands on your body and know where the issue was coming from, not necessarily where the pain is, which is something craniosacral therapists, over 300,000 people or more worldwide have been trained to do today. So in that case, the osteopath, now an MD or a DO, could also be a medical intuitive. And medical intuitives may not label themselves as such, but when you're consulting one for your animal, you're going to want to find somebody who is advertising themselves as a medical intuitive. Some of the other clients I've had who have used medical intuitives include a little dog who has just layers of issues going on. He was a rescue. He has a lot of pain in his body. He contracted Lyme and several other tick-borne diseases. His behavior became erratic and unpredictable because of the pain in his body. He became quite nippy, even with his people, and not really attacking them, but just so grumpy you couldn't even get near him without him trying to nip. So at that point, the person consulted a medical intuitive and then also found other people that do long distance healing to clear some of the restrictions in the dog's body. Now, some people who are medical intuitives are also healers who can do energetic healing from a distance. Not all of them do both things. So that was a really important thing for this dog. And eventually this dog owner who was out in Boston found me. I'm about 130 miles away from Boston, and she drove the little guy out here, and I was able to use the information from the medical intuitive and then my own work to be able to help that dog be as functional as he possibly can be. So that's another example. Another time you might consult a medical intuitive is when you have, let's say, pet family members who are not getting along. You might also call a shaman for this kind of circumstance, but a medical intuitive, usually when animals are that grumpy, there's something physical going on as well that might not be obvious. And so sometimes in those cases, I've had clients contact a medical intuitive to find out if one of the dogs is irritated because they've got something going on energetically or physically in their body. And plenty of my horse clients have contacted a medical intuitive because with horses, sometimes they're just a little bit off in their behavior, but they aren't really manifesting in some obvious disease condition. And certainly when Lyme disease was first becoming diagnosed in horses up here in New England, I mean, my horse was the first one in Massachusetts to be diagnosed with Lyme disease, and that was and he had actually gotten it in Connecticut, and then I moved him over the state line. But that was in like 1991 or 2. So even that far, that seems pretty recent to me. But at that point, we were unable to figure out what was wrong with these horses. And the only obvious symptom my horse had, he wasn't lame, was that he was very snuggly and clingy. He seemed really needy. And he was also getting older, and I had moved him from a big farm with a lot of horses. And that kind of clingy behavior often happens to a single horse after he's been with a group. But if I had consulted a medical intuitive, they would have been able to tell me that he had Lyme disease going on. And in fact, the vet came and did the blood test, and of course we found out he had Lyme disease. But sometimes, for horses in particular, they get Lyme disease almost annually in this area, and there's really not much you can do about it. Those bug buster sheets that are impregnated with some kind of tick repellent work really well. They're really big and they're really long, and they're great in this environment because it's not ever really that hot here, and they do seem to really help keep the ticks off. But it is a constant battle with Lyme and tick-borne diseases for horses in New England, and dogs as well, but we have better options for dog repellent. And so a lot of those horses develop chronic long-term systemic conditions, And so in that case, a medical intuitive can be really helpful to figure out where the biggest problems are and get those treated and start working towards a healthier state for that horse. So I've had lots of horse clients consult a medical intuitive on occasion. And so, as I said, some medical intuitives do actual hands-on work. Some of them do long distance work to heal what they find, and others just really can give you kind of a picture of what might be going on with your pet, and then you have to find other practitioners to treat the issue that they've come up with. And often when people are getting ready to consult a medical intuitive, I often ask them, if they're already working with me, to kind of get a sense of what they feel is going on. Of course, we all know our animals better than anyone else knows them. I was the only person who would have noticed that my horse was more snuggly than he usually was when he was sick. And, you know, to other people, he was getting older. They just thought he was calming down. But I knew something was wrong. And I think all of us know when there's something wrong with our pets. And their behavior is different. Their relationship with us is different. Their whether or not they're diving into their dinner bowl with the same enthusiasm can be shifted. So at that point, you might want to think about a medical intuitive. Now, of course, as I mentioned in my very early part of this series I was doing on on alternative therapies, if you look this up on Wikipedia, they're going to tell you this is no substitute for Western medical care, and, you know, this is irresponsible, and these people are charlatans. But you know what? I had cancer too, and I can tell you, when you have something really wrong with you or your pet, don't leave any stone unturned. You don't have to believe what they say, right, Biss? You can listen to what they have to say and add it to the information that you have in order to address the needs of your pet. I certainly would not go to a medical intuitive if I wasn't also working with a holistic vet to address whatever information I may find. And for instance, acupuncture is a great thing to release energetic restrictions before they become big physical problems. So if your medical intuitive suggests some kind of emotional restrictions or inability to let go of something in your rescue dog's past, acupuncture, which lots of vets do now, could be a good thing to do to treat that. So, you know, and you might not think your dog needs it until you consulted that person. So I consider it just another piece of information and another part of your toolbox to keep your pets healthy and your horses happy and well and comfortable in their bodies, because after all, they do so much for us. Why don't we want to give them the best possible care? And honestly, I've had, you know, a very small proportion of my clients consult a medical intuitive, you know, maybe only, I don't know, 10 to 15, 20% people that I have worked with have ever looked for a medical intuitive for their pets. And there are some good ones around. And they, as I said, can be really helpful when you're just stumped and your vet doesn't know what's going on and you're trying to work with something really stubborn and systemic and chronic, and all kinds of other things just aren't giving you a lot of answers. So at that point, you might consult with a medical intuitive to find out what's going on with your pet. Right, Trist? Have I ever called one for you? No. And certainly people who do craniosacral therapy can give you a lot of information about what's going on with your pet as well. But sometimes, as my client in Boston discovered, that medical intuitive really helped her. Her dog had so many layers of different things going on. It was hard to tease out which one was causing which issue. And that medical intuitive was super helpful and actually directed the client to me, having just looked around, Googling in the area, to find somebody to help treat what she was finding in that dog. So don't be afraid to try everything if you have the finances, and medical intuitives can be a valuable part of your pet's health plan if you are fortunate enough to find one in your area. So that's a little bit about medical intuitives. Thanks for joining us today for this episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And this week we will be at our jobs as educators, right, Tris? On Monday and Wednesday. So we will be back with another episode of Conversations with a Corgi on Tuesday and then Thursday. So we'll see you then, and we're going to continue talking about the different types and work of animal communicators. There we go. Right, Biss? He's still wearing his scarf because it's so cold. Joyce, I can't read it. I'm not that farsighted anymore. I'll have to answer your question on the comment section. But from what I can tell, I think you're saying someone helped you and really saved your pets. So we'll see. I hope that's what it says. Thanks for joining us today. Everybody stay warm in this cold weather. We're finally getting some relief this week. And be kind to your pets. Have a great day.